What's up guys, my name's Dean, aka the Blue Crusader, and welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I'd do a little bit of a different video. Last night I actually saw the brand new Halloween movie at the cinema, which has been out for quite a little while so far, but I actually managed to see it yesterday on the 2nd, and it was actually a really good movie. So I kind of want to go over the movie, say what's good about it, what I didn't like about it, what's maybe a little bit off, and kind of give a basic review on the movie, because if you guys didn't know, seeing as this channel is primarily for gaming videos, I am actually a huge film fan. I have got some other channels where I make short films and animations. I am really into film. I am a filmmaker of sorts, if you like, and I do enjoy going to the cinema a lot, and I do enjoy watching films, and I kind of want to share that on this channel as well. So I'm going to be doing a film review of the brand new Halloween film. For those of you guys who may not know what I'm talking about, it's actually the 2018 film called Halloween, which has the classic horror villain Michael Myers in to return in a remake. Now, there's some great things about this movie, there's some kind of off things about this movie, but it was a pretty decent film overall. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So this review is not going to be entirely spoiler free, so if you haven't seen the film and you kind of have maybe a wish to actually watch it, I'd recommend actually clicking off, because I'll probably end up spoiling a lot of the film. I've done reviews before, and in my reviews I have the style of kind of just talking about the story and what happens, so it'll probably end up ruining it, and I don't want to upset anybody. So if you do want to watch the film, this isn't going to be a spoiler free review, so I would recommend clicking off. But now that we've actually got past the warning, let's start talking about it. So basically the film opens up on kind of like an offshoot of the story, kind of like there's a second story going on, but it actually works quite well to introduce the characters. So we kind of see some people working, I think they're working for like a news station or maybe the journalists, and it's a pair of these two guys, and they're basically going to inspect the whole Michael Myers study and investigation. And he's been in prison for a long time now. I think he's in some sort of like psychiatric prison institution or something. Now they actually go to try and seek out the main character and talk about her account on the events of what happened, because basically sometime in the 70s or 80s, but I'm pretty sure it was like 1978 or the late 70s, in one of the original movies, Mike Myers basically attacks a group of people, and one of the survivors, or the one survivor, because I can't remember how the film goes, is actually Laurie Strode, who's played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and basically she's like the whole main character in this, because Michael's been captured for like the 5 disasters he caused, and he's been in an institution for a long time, and basically they're going to get an account on her events. So they go to find her. It kind of has like a little story arc about these two journalists, which is kind of irrelevant, but it's quite a nice way. It actually worked out to actually introduce the characters quite well, and they have a little success. We kind of learn that Laurie Strode is kind of like paranoid, if you like. She's very antisocial. She kind of doesn't like company or visitors, but it's kind of funny at the start because they offer her like $3,000 just to like have a talk with her, and she talks to them for like 2 or 3 minutes and then just sort of snuffs them off and tells them to go away. So pretty interesting introduction. It was quite good at the start, and we kind of get the mood of the character and how she's like moody and everything. They basically go to the institution at the start and they actually meet Michael, and they show him the mask, the Michael Myers mask, and he kind of has no reaction. And there's this really weird like sequence of like all the mental people in the institution like roaring and laughing, and like it's just a montage of like pure craziness, and it had like no relevance to the scene. I don't know why it was there. It was kind of just like a mind screw of like all these weird emotions and like mental people just going crazy. Michael, you kind of see a little bit of his face. You see that he's a bit of an older guy now, and you kind of see like some scars on his face, but it never shows you his full face. And I think he's got like a problem with like maybe his left eye. I can't remember. It was like one of his eyes, but you don't see it fully. But it's pretty interesting stuff. Goes on to the typical Halloween music, and then that's where we get introduced to them meeting Laurie Strode. So that's basically what happened before. But we get introduced to a character. We learn that basically Michael has been in the institution, and Laurie Strode's been paranoid ever since the instant she survived. So she's been preparing for years. You learn that there's kind of like a rift between her family, so she's kind of like not having a good relationship with her daughter and her granddaughter, because they seem to think that she's crazy. I don't know if they know about her ordeal. I would presume they do, but they think that she should forget about it and like get past it because it was in the past. But as a typical story arc, we'll realise later that her preparing and preparation and basically paranoia actually works out in their favour. Basically, we see that the mum's a liar. The granddaughter wants to see her grandma, who is Laurie Strode, but the mother just doesn't really like her mum. She feels as if the values she was raised upon and how paranoid she was about like Michael coming back is just too much. She just doesn't really want her mother to come to tea, so she kind of lies to her daughter, and her daughter realises that she's lied because she doesn't want her mother to come, so she doesn't want Laurie Strode to actually come for for a meal. The daughter realizes that the mother's lying because she's trying to avoid inviting the grandmother around. So kind of confusing stuff, but you'll see that this kind of causes a rift. You'll see that the mother and Laurie Strode, who is her mother, have a really on and off relationship, and there's a few moments like this throughout where she's kind of being crazy and saying, you know, Michael's gonna come back, you need to prepare, how I raised you was right and it was good, and things like this. And the movie has a pretty good narrative and story. So let's fast forward a little bit past that, because I've kind of given you a basic synopsis, and basically let's get to the stage where Michael actually escapes, because we all know that Michael was going to escape. It was pretty predictable. It doesn't really explain how he escaped until later, and it kind of briefly explains it, but basically he's on a bus. He's on a prison bus, so he's going to get transferred, and Laurie Strode finds out about this, and she basically like loads all of her weapons, she gets ready, she's doing like target practice and stuff like that, and as you guessed it, when he gets transferred on the bus, something crazy happens to the bus like topples over, and Michael escapes. And there's kind of another really weird like off scene that didn't need to be there, but I guess it's kind of there just to add unnecessary violence and kind of build it up. You'll see like a whole tragedy or like fatality with like these two people. There's like a boy and his dad talking in a car, and basically they're talking about the boy liking dancing over hunting and like all this like really random stuff, and his dad's like, oh, you need to come hunting. Kind of irrelevant, but the scene's there yet again. You'll find a lot of irrelevant fillers, but it kind of helps to build up the story and show like how notorious Michael is. Basically, you see the father leave the vehicle because he sees the crashed bus as they're driving, and he goes to check it out, and obviously the son doesn't want him to leave, but the son still has the rifle, bear in mind, from his dad's hunting. So the guy goes out, never returns, because there's all these like crazy people walking around from the crash, and obviously for some reason, even though Michael is this whole notorious villain, he doesn't do anything to the other crazy people. Don't ask me why, but for some reason they all skip away happy and look at butterflies and they're fine. But then like the other people who aren't from that institution, like the normal citizens, apparently get hunted by Michael, which made no sense to me, because he could have probably just ended all of them and satiated whatever desire it is his character has, but whatever. That was kind of one of the things I didn't really understand. Then the boy's father, it just disappears, and the boy goes out the car looking for him. You know that the father, something's happened to him at this point, so that's kind of like that. But this is all irrelevant filler. This is where Michael escapes, and even though the boy has the weapon for hunting, for some reason he just runs back to his car. He ends up shooting some doctor of Michael's who's like been studying Michael for like so long, and somehow that guy survives later and he gets saved by a police officer, which we'll learn about a little bit later. This review's basically kind of just going over the story and then my thoughts on each segment of the story, rather than just a rough kind of like comment on it, because it's a lot easier for me to discuss. Michael escapes. The boy runs back to the car because he can't find his dad, and there's a police officer on the ground who's been attacked as well, and he says just run, so you know that there's danger there. And the boy runs to the car. Basically, Michael's in the back of his car when he goes back to it somehow. The boy's neck gets snapped. Boom. That's Michael's like main like attack. Then a cop goes around to the bus. He reports that Michael's missing. There's this huge bad thing. Has a discussion with the sheriff, and they search for Michael. Michael's first attack is a gas station. We go back to the reporters from the start who are trying to investigate Michael, and they don't know he's escaped to this point because it hasn't been like advertised that he's been escaped or whatever. So they're just chilling at the gas station. They realize a few things are off. A few things are a little bit strange than normal. There's blood in different places. There's a few people injured, like mechanics and people at the gas station on the floor. And this is where it starts to get eerie, because the woman, basically it's a man and woman, the reporters, and the woman goes to the toilet and she's sitting, you know, doing her business, and then she hears some footsteps with some heavy shoes, and then for some reason the stall door of the toilet starts shaking violently and the guy's trying to get in. She's like, you know, excuse me, someone's inside here, sort of thing. And this is where Michael comes. Then Michael proceeds to get violent, and he's rattling the doors and trying to like pull her legs, and she's like crawling underneath the stalls to try and get out. It's a pretty intensive scene actually. It made me go like wow, because for me like violence in films is nothing really. I don't really feel too affected by it, but this scene was almost so graphic and gory, which we'll talk about later, that it was kind of just wow. And like even one of my friends noticed it, and I wasn't offended by it or anything. It's just it was like wow, it actually kind of made me feel a little bit emotional. It kind of made me have like an emotional response because it was so gory and brutal. So that definitely kind of made me react a little bit. But when she's screaming and she's like helpless and Michael's trying to like pull her out from underneath like the bathroom stalls, the male like reporter or the journalist hears her scream, so he runs to the bathroom to help. And then this is where it gets really gory because Michael just grabs him, starts hitting his head on the door, on the sink, and this guy's face is so bloody and just like completely like mangled. It's a true sight, believe me, that like you're just sitting there in the cinema like, whoa, they've actually made this scene. It's like, it's completely graphic. But like I said, it's just a movie. It didn't really affect me too much, but I was like, wow, like that's the thing. He just gets brutally, absolutely demolished, and you think the woman's gonna escape and maybe she has more relevance in the story, but they're kind of just throwaway characters that we used at the start, just add a bit more character descriptions and kind of allow us to learn more about the main characters. So they get thrown out the window. She gets absolutely destroyed as well. So I can't remember how she gets destroyed. I think he pulls her out from underneath the bathroom thing and then something happens. My memory's just gone blank. She wasn't really an important character anyway. And that's basically the start of Michael's whole trip thing. So Michael escapes. Then Laurie Strode goes to her daughter's house again and tries to like reason with her. She says she saw Michael, and there's a thing where she like sees Michael's figure or shadow at some point in a car, and she like has a weapon and she's like ready to strike. I don't know if it was a dream or a vision or something. Kind of confused me there. That was a really confusing moment. So she goes to her daughter's house, says she's like seen Michael or Michael's escaped or something, and basically that's where everything starts. And she thinks her mum's crazy. She tells her to go away again, and she drives off. She thinks of like a whole plan to get like the family getting ready together and stuff. And there's a few relevant characters that really didn't serve much other than just to fill the story in runtime. Like for an example, there was like the two typical like male friends from high school, like the nerds who thought they were cool, and then the main character, which is the mother's daughter, and then the grandmother is Laurie Strode. So don't really want to touch up too much on those characters because they were kind of useless. I mean, the daughter or the granddaughter, if you like, depending who we're talking about, who's like maybe 17, she didn't really do much apart from run away for the entire film. She wasn't really much of an interesting character, so I don't really want to touch on her too much. She didn't really help to defeat Michael. She was just there as kind of like, I guess, a bonus, and she was just in the way, and she was just a fatality waiting to happen. God knows how she didn't actually get injured. But Michael starts to hunt them. He's like spooking people. He's on the loose. And now the doctor that got injured earlier, basically I told you there was a doctor who was studying Michael and that young boy. Before Michael got him, he shot the doctor. Now the doctor survives and a police officer saves him, and he actually is in the cop car when they're hunting for Michael, because he thinks, you know, that he can reason with Michael. The police officers think that he's going to be useful. But what happens is when the police officer finds Michael, they actually hit him with a car, which is actually pretty funny because, you know, Michael in the other films, he's been set on fire, he's been run over, he's been shot, and he just survives or goes in a coma or something crazy. He looks like he's dead on the floor. The doctor takes his pulse, and I don't know if he was lying or if he probably was lying. He says that he's dead. He takes his pulse on his neck like this, and he says he's dead. But what happens is the police officer says that he's going to shoot Michael anyway, just to make sure. Now the doctor, what he does is, I think he takes the gun and shoots the police officer, or he like attacks him with something, because he's been studying Michael and he's kind of insane as well, even though he's supposed to be like a psychiatrist or doctor. Apparently he's insane himself. He's like a big like over fan of Michael, so he decides to like end the police officer, and in Michael fashion just starts committing like atrocious acts or something. I don't know why. And then he drags Michael in the car in the back seat because he thinks he's dead. He wants to like study him or something. I didn't really understand. That was just such a really weird scene for me. And then it gets even more weird because he actually takes Michael's mask and wears it himself. So it's like this short, stubby, fat doctor who has Michael's mask on, and he's trying to be like a bad guy villain like Michael. Didn't really make much sense for me. It was kind of it was almost an annoying thing, but it was also really funny. But what was really good, and something that I kind of expected to happen, was when he gets in the car, the doctor, Michael grabs him by the neck and pulls him, and he just kills him. It's pretty funny. Even though like the guy was helping Michael's obviously like a mindless psycho, and he still kills the doctor anyway, which is pretty hilarious. And then he takes the mask, obviously. Basically the daughter is running through the woods and she's running away from Michael after this happens because she's in the back of the car and she sees him kill the doctor. The whole family gets together in Laurie Strode's house in the barn because they think it's going to be safer. Now the father, actually gets killed by Michael, who's in the cop car still, after getting the police officer. And then what happens is Michael attempts to converse on the house. Laurie Strode's waiting there with a rifle. By this time, she's already got all the family together. They've got past like all the doubting of the grandmother, and they realise she's not a weird idiot. They realise that Michael's on the loose and she needs to help them. So she's there with a rifle, but Michael like pulls her through the window and like grabs her neck, but she manages to like almost hit. I think she moves her gun to her chest and then shoots Michael's hand, and you'll see he's missing like 1 or 2 fingers later. And then he goes into the house and she manages to shoot him, and then he's like outside, but then somehow he comes back and starts smashing through the window or something, and there's kind of like a fight scene, and she has a secret passageway that leads into like the cellar, and the cellar's kind of like, it almost looks like a prison or something, but it's actually a trap, which we find out later. So her family hides underground while she's like there with a rifle, you know, seeking out Michael in the house. Michael's hiding in this really creepy scene with a set of mannequins. Now, I actually like this scene. Somehow though, what I didn't understand is when Michael actually like gets the father outside and ends him, while he gets hit outside by Laurie Strode and while he vanishes, he has the time to grab the father, put him inside a wardrobe inside the house when he's outside within like a sequence of like 3 minutes, and also hide as a mannequin. Made no sense, but whatever, it's just a movie. And then Michael jumps out from behind and grabs her, and then like ends up like having a fight scene, and then kicks her off a balcony, and then she looks like she's dead but she's not, and then Michael turns around and looks the other way, and then when he looks back, Laurie Strode, or the grandmother if you like, has disappeared, which is really weird. So then it kind of goes down to the mother and the daughter who are in the basement, so they have to use a weapon, and eventually Michael finds a way. I don't know how he finds a way, that they're under the floorboards. I think he's heard something, but somehow he finds a way to find the secret passage, or the door which leads to the basement, because since I didn't mention it before, there's like a secret lever and like a countertop or something that like turns and opens a secret door. Somehow Michael finds this, don't ask me how, there's literally no way he could have found this, and then he pushes it over and breaks it, which is just really confusing to me. But as he opens it, he doesn't reveal himself, there's just nobody there. And then the daughter pretends to be scared, and she's like yelling for her mother, which is Laurie Strode, asking for help because Laurie Strode's like the main badass with a weapon, and she's putting this on as a fake, because then what happens is Michael comes down and falls for the bait, and she shoots him straight through the forehead here. And obviously it being Michael, it doesn't kill him, because I guess he's got like supernatural powers or something. They shoot him in the head, nothing really happens then. Then Laurie Strode, I think, shoots him as well, or she kicks him to the basement, one of the two, and Michael falls straight down into the basement. And then the family comes back out of the basement, and Laurie Strode locks it, and you'll find that it's actually a trap, because these metal like spikes and like a trap door comes in and closes it. And then these weird like flames just come on, and she sets like the whole thing alight, and she gets a flare down and throws that down, and the whole thing just gets engulfed in flames, and Michael's set on fire. And that's basically the end of the film. They go off and the whole house is on fire, but you know at the end, it's a Halloween film. Michael's been stabbed, Michael's been shot, he's had like limbs removed, he's been set on fire, and then he just went into a coma. So you know that's not the end of Michael. You know there'll probably be a sequel sometime, whether it's soon or whether it's in 10 years. So that's the end of the movie. I thought the ending was kind of good, it's kind of like the same fashion. And now I'll just go on to some basic opinions before the end of the video. So what do I think about the film? I feel like some characters were almost empty or throwaways. Then some of the other characters, like the daughter and the really young ones, kind of had some like backstory to them. They did get developed, but the backstory wasn't really too relevant to the actual story, so I didn't really care so much about that. I thought Michael was really good. He wasn't some like big, obnoxious, like muscular like mountain. He was just like some tall, almost frail old man that had kind of like supernatural strength almost, but it still fit in with the story, so I thought that was quite good. I thought the story about Laurie Strode being like an old badass and helping fight Michael off and preparing, I thought that was a really strong narrative. It was something new. It wasn't just some teenagers being hunted by Michael. It was actually like an old woman who like survived a previous encounter with Michael, prepare to have a final standoff with Michael, and I thought that story arc worked really well. And she also carried the performance. Jamie Lee Curtis played really well in the Laurie Strode role again, and she was kind of like just an irrelevant sort of teenager in the older film, but now she came back as like a full-on main character and she played it really well, so I thought that was really good. I thought there was some super brutal scenes, like I mentioned before, that just made me like stop and go wow. Stuff that I've not seen. I mean, I've seen gore, but this was kind of like on a whole new level, and for some reason it actually like moved me and made me feel like a certain way, almost as if it wasn't a real film. I actually felt for the characters being attacked. I was like, whoa, how can someone physically do that to someone? Even though it wasn't real, I still had sympathy for the characters getting attacked, those two reporters at the start, and I also just felt so emotionally surprised by how brutal this act was, even though it was entirely fake, obviously. The movie definitely moved me in that way. I definitely relate to the characters. There was a few of them which I didn't really feel too strongly about, but I definitely did relate to them. And another thing I didn't mention before is one of the daughter's friends, who obviously I didn't cover because it wasn't a main part of the story, was like babysitting, and there was this really funny kid who was talking and making jokes and like swearing and talking about like dirty stuff, things you wouldn't expect for like a kid to talk about unless they're like a smart ass or just trying to be funny. And he looked like Gary Coleman, and he also reminded me of Gary Coleman. It was kind of like a really funny thing. He made the movie like a fun experience, and the jokes, even some of my friends who didn't have high hopes of the film came out laughing and actually found that character really relatable and funny. So I feel like almost any film has to kind of have a bit of a comedy element to it that people can relate to, because then like even if people try out the film who might not be interested in the story itself or might not relate to the older films if they haven't seen them, they can still relate to the funny character, because humour is kind of like a widespread thing anyone can relate to. So I felt like that kept the movie together, and that was a really good implementation. I think the shots were good. I think there was just enough violence and not too much, although I felt like there could be a little bit more to make Michael even more sinister. I feel like they had enough in there, it wasn't too little, and the scenes were just wow. So I think this film's worth a watch. I don't know if I watched the old ones. I have seen some of the old Halloweens, but I'm not sure if I saw the original where Jamie Lee Curtis is in. But I definitely recommend watching this film, and especially if you get like student price for the film, so you get it cheaper, it's even more worth it, and it's a good film to watch with friends. I watched it with like 4 friends, and we went and watched the movie. We had a good time. We genuinely enjoyed the movie, and a few of them didn't have high hopes, but they came out enjoying it. So I think it's a great social experience. I think the movie was great, and also since it's around Halloween right now, I'd give it a watch. If you're watching it maybe next year, this video or the review, I'd definitely give it a watch. I think it was generally a strong movie. So this is my first film review. I think actually it might be my second, because I did do a Thor Ragnarok review, but I'm not sure if it was on this channel. If you want me to do more film reviews of brand new movies, then definitely do let me know. I am thinking of introducing them a little bit. If you guys enjoy film reviews, then definitely do like and subscribe, and drop a comment below if you've seen Halloween or you're looking forward to seeing it. Subscribe for more videos like this, reviews and gaming. Make sure to turn on the notifications so you get notified when I upload. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Damn, son. Pack it in, let me begin. I came to win, battle me, that's a sin. I won't tell attacker, punk, you better back up. Try and play the role and yet a whole crew will act up. Get up, stand up, come on, throw your hands.